Welcome, everyone, to Hands on Politics, where a couple of brothers from the Bronx get together on a weekly basis to discuss the issues of the day. This is episode number 95, and we appreciate you coming here to the Bronx Institute, where we discuss politics and make it understandable for those who want to understand politics. We appreciate all of you out there. We're over 7,000 followers now, Ken. We're really kind of taking off here. It's good to be back with you. Lot to talk about. How are you doing this week, Ken?
Doing great, Rich. Beautiful weather down here. A lot of things happening in the news, and so I'm looking forward to digging right into it, Rich.
Absolutely. We're doing, we had the 80-degree temperatures yesterday. Today, it's a very dreary, rainy day, but still decent temperatures, but a good day to be in here talking about politics. And so, Ken, there's a lot going on. What do you want to start with? There was a big Supreme Court ruling with all the gerrymandering that's going on. Do you want to start with Louisiana and the Supreme Court ruling there?
Yeah, I do want to start with that. And let me set it up this way. The purpose of the 14th and 15th Amendments were to end racial discrimination. The purpose of the 1965 Voting Rights Act was to end discrimination. But then somehow these two things morphed into allowing for racial gerrymandering. So I think it happened in 1986, Thornburg versus Gingles, where the Supreme Court ruled that if district lines dilute minority voting power, that's a bad thing. And we needed to draw majority minority districts so that minority voters have a fair chance to elect their candidates. And when I read this, I'm thinking, okay, what does diluting minority voting power means? And when race hustlers say that somebody's diluting minority voting power, what they mean is that you're less likely to be able to elect a black candidate. And the Gingles test pressured states to focus heavily on race when drawing districts, and this led to racial gerrymandering, which specifically violates the 14th Amendment. Also, it pressures states to create districts to match a group's population share. So in Louisiana, if blacks make up 30% of the population and whites make up 70%, what these race hustlers want is they're like, well, we need to have 30% black districts. And of course, that's wrong. But anyway, all this came to a head in 2020, Rich, where Louisiana did their census and they found out they had to redraw district lines, and they redrew the lines so that there would be one majority black district. And so they were sued for that, and they won at a court level, which is specifically made up to handle cases like this. So they sued there and they won. But then once the two districts were drawn up, then conservatives or white people sued and they said, no, you can't do that. And so it went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled on whether or not districts could be drawn based on race. And basically what the majority opinion said is that race cannot be the dominant factor in drawing district lines without sufficient justification. And they said the state prioritized race over normal redistricting principles like compactness, shape, and communities. And so basically what this did is it's saying to everybody, you cannot draw maps based on race, which, Rich, as you and I know, that's what the Constitution is all about. And so, Rich, that's where we are right now. And I'm going to pass it back to you, but I do want to talk a little bit about the dissent by Ketanji Brown Jackson and Kagan and Sotomayor.
Yeah, Ken, absolutely. That's the definition of racism, is doing things based on race. And, the assumption that the left always makes is that the black community is monolithic, that all they care about is voting for black people. And that couldn't be less true. It's one of those things that people vote in their best interests economically, mostly. and then on their cultural values after that. And, I guess some candidates, it might be more of the cultural or whatever. But to assume that black voters are different than white voters, because you'll find black candidates in white districts, just Byron Donalds. That to me just kind of makes the case. If you're a good politician and you align with the views of your constituents, it doesn't matter for most people what your skin color is. So to assume that you have to put all these blacks into one district and they're only going to vote for a black representative is racist. It just, and it's also demeaning to the black community, because what you're saying is they can't see beyond race, that they don't look at economic opportunity. And all you have to do is say something that drives them absolutely crazy to prove your argument, which is Donald Trump. Donald Trump got a much bigger percent, especially of black men, who understand that he represents opportunity no matter what. He's been one of the greatest presidents for the black community ever, because it's not about giving stuff to them. It's about giving them opportunity to create their own stuff. And Trump has been absolutely brilliant with that, because Trump doesn't see color. Trump sees opportunity for hardworking people, no matter what color you are, Ken. So this is a good thing. I think it's going to be good in the, especially the southern states, where they've done a lot of gerrymandering to create these black districts based on false assumptions. And now we're going to move back to, let's just look at the what are the common issues of the community? Not what color they are, but are they farmers? Are they in the urban areas? Are they manufactured? Whatever the case might be, that makes more common sense on what their common shared values are. That's my thought, Ken.
Yeah. And let me just say this, Rich, and you see on our screen, those are 6 different districts that have been gerrymandering. It might be hard sometimes to see if they were fairly drawn, but it's easy to tell if they were unfairly drawn. Absolutely. And looking at these 6, you can see that they were drawn specifically to, and I don't even know these specific ones. They're either based on race or maybe political party, but they're not drawn fairly. Generally, what people say is that when you're drawing districts, they should be of equal population. They should be a reasonable shape, like sort of square-ish, but they shouldn't be these snake-type things. They need to be connected, and they need to be communities of interest, which is, one of the things that you just focused on. But, so to me, you start out with the different shapes, and then you're like, we don't have enough we don't have enough population. We're going to adjust them. And, so there's different ways to draw them. But one thing we know is that this is unfair. But Rich, I want to talk a little bit about, again, Ketanji Brown Jackson, Elena Kagan, and Sonia Sotomayor. Their opening paragraph in their dissent, in my opinion, tells you all you need to know about how racist these judges are, and more importantly, how they view the United States. And they said, consider a hypothetical congressional district subject to redistricting. They say the district is originally in the shape of a near perfect circle sitting in the middle of a rectangular state with a long history of virulent racial discrimination and its many effects, including residential segregation, political division, and it remains significant today, right? So they're painting this imaginary district.
Right.
The population of the district, they say, is 90% black, and the surrounding 5 districts is 90% white. Black residents vote heavily for Democrat candidates, while white residents vote heavily for Republicans. The circle district thus enables the state's black community to elect a representative of their choice, whom no neighboring community would put in office. They said, in this not so hypothetical arrangement, they say the state legislature decides to eliminate the circle district. The black voters now are widely dispersed, unlike the state's white voters, and they lack any ability to elect a representative of their choice. What I think is interesting about this is how they think that America is like this virulent, racist country still, but also how what they're saying is if the black individuals in that district cannot elect a black politician, that they've wasted their vote. And I'm going to ask you a question, and that is, do black people, just like do conservative people, do white people, lose the impact of their vote if they're in a district where they don't make up a majority? That's what these people are saying. They're like, if they don't make up a majority and they can't vote for a black candidate, their vote is wasted. So what do you think about that? Is that true?
I can't even make sense of it, because what you're saying is the only thing that matters is skin color. Nothing else matters. So if the person they vote for is white, but they align with their Christian values, their economic opportunities, all the things that they think are important, but it's not a black person, that's bad. I don't understand that. You can, I don't care what color somebody is. What I want to know is what they are going to do when they what's their behavior going to be when they get to Congress? And are they going to vote for the values that I believe in? Do they want to follow the Constitution, or are they Palestinian supporters, socialist, communists that want to destroy capitalism and tax billionaires? That's all I care about. I want their values and their voting to align with me. So what these dissenters, and Ketanji Brown should be, she should be recalled from the office because she's not qualified. And I think even the other Supreme Court justices know this, but they are making stuff up that America is a racist nation. America bends over backwards, or has bent over backwards for trying to bring racial equality back into perspective from the slavery days. And blacks have had the same opportunities as whites as long as I can remember, Ken, growing up in the Bronx. We went to school with many, many, many minorities who all had opportunities. Some of them had more opportunities than white folks did because of the push with affirmative action and all these to get kids to college from minority communities. So to suggest that racial discrimination is widespread they're not basing it on facts. And again, that's also not based on the Constitution either.
That's right.
So these dissenters, and particularly Ketanji Brown, she is very, very dangerous for this country, because she's as close to a dictator as you get. When you look at her opinions, they're never based on the Constitution. Nope. They're based on her feelings and what she wants done. So it's a very interesting. I think I don't know what the impeachment or recall for a Supreme Court justice is, Ken, or if there is one. But if there is one, it should be pursued.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a couple of points to make. One is, you said Ketanji Brown Jackson's opinions are not are not based on the Constitution. I'm sure you've seen John Kennedy, senator for Louisiana, when he is grilling Biden appointees, Obama appointees, and he's asking them basic questions about constitutional law. And they have no idea what he's talking about. And it's actually, he essentially humiliates them because they don't understand the law. These judges and justices, they're not interested in the law. What they're interested in doing is ruling in a way that that lines up with their political opinion. They care about the end. The ends justify the means. So throw out the Constitution. I just want to vote that it's legal to create districts based on race. They compare about their ultimate what they want done. But here's the other thing, Rich. Just using their logic, and if you have a state that we'll say has 6 districts, one in the middle is black, and then you have these other white districts, in a situation where they're trying to create a scenario where there's going to be 5 white districts and they vote conservatively, and 1 black districts that vote liberally. In my opinion, when you segregate the votes that way, just think about let's using their own logic, where they think we live in a racist society. In their scenario, those 5 white racist politicians, if they don't have to worry about getting the votes of any black people, then they won't be interested in the issues that are important to black people at all. So
Right.
I would argue, if you create districts based on what we said, equal population, reasonable shape, connectivity, communities of interest, you might have situations where you have a 70-30 split, 70% white, 30% black in all of these districts. And Rich, if you're running for one of those districts and you're behind in the polls and you think you're going to lose, wouldn't you consider the black vote, again, assuming this racist notion that these 3 Supreme Court justices are using, that they're going to vote in a black way? Wouldn't you want to moderate your policy to try to pull in the 30% of the black vote? I mean, I think it's the exact opposite of what they're saying. Black people are better off if they are swing voters in 6 districts as opposed to 1 district where they make up the majority.
Yeah. And again, Ken, I agree. The assumption that, one race votes one way and one race votes the other just because a candidate is white or black absolutely makes no sense to me. And so from that perspective, you're right. There are a lot of black folks that are conservatives and a lot of white folks that are liberals. So, you've got to go to the issues of everybody.
Mhm.
And you've got to appeal to a larger cross section, because it's not about white and black. And the voters, their assumption that they're just going to vote for a white person makes no sense when you're talking about this, because if the white person's economic policies are totally against yours, they want the white person's a communist and the black woman is a capitalist that's a small business owner, she's the one I'm voting for, and most people are voting for that are not communists. So it's like it's really a very disappointing lack of analytical thinking about voting. Gerrymandering, what has happened over the years is, and black districts are one thing, and then also in the gerrymandering is, these are all Democratic voters. So we're going to put all these Democratic voters into one block, which a lot of times ends up being kind of racially, unfortunately, it has been over the years. But all the Republicans here, all the Democrats here. So basically what we've got is an uncompetitive system, which is good for nobody, because we're always looking skins and independents. We're voting on what's going on in this area. So it really, anytime you're gerrymandering based on one specific criteria, you are eliminating competition and the need to appeal to a broader constituency, which in the long run becomes better if those constituencies are not left-wing communists. Unfortunately, right now, the Democratic Party has allowed their left-wing communists to take over. And that's part of our issue too. But that comes along with all of this gerrymandering has really trained people to vote in very specific ways, and that's why you get one party rule in so many places because the other side gives up, and the only people that matter are the people that in that one party, and you get the radicals of that party.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And I also think that everybody talks about how divisive politics has become. If you had districts that weren't drawn just on a racial basis or on a party basis, maybe we wouldn't have this type of political division in the country that we have right now. So, Rich, if you're ready, I'd like to move on to another topic.
Sure, absolutely.
How about
Oh God. This this is just part of the judges, Ken. We have we have put way too many of you see down in that left corner, that pinhead judge, Zia Fargwa, um, apologizing to a guy that just tried to kill the president
and his
and
cabinet.
yeah, and the cabinet and whoever else was gonna be in the way. We all saw the video. We all know the guy is a left-wing radical that was radicalized by MSNBC, CNN, all of those Trump haters. He was radicalized, and this judge is apologizing for the situation he's in with his living conditions because they put him on a suicide watch or something because he did not expect to live. So
Mhm.
he thought he was going to be shot. That's the discussion we had last week on our secret service. Yeah, that was a bit of a disappointment there. But this guy expected to be killed, so they put him on a suicide watch, I assume. But why would a judge be apologizing to a criminal, first of all, and then somebody who we know his intention was to assassinate a president? What kind of people do we have on the bench, Ken? And can we get this guy thrown off? Like what is the method to get rid of this guy? We have a lot of judges that we need to reevaluate and get off the bench.
Absolutely. Now, Rich, this guy, Zia Faruqi, he's a practicing Muslim. His family came from Pakistan. Apparently, he was born here. Um, but now he's a magistrate judge, which is different from a regular judge. How does a person become a magistrate judge? And what exactly is a magistrate judge? They're sort of like a physician's assistant or a teacher's assistant. They're not technically like a
Right.
judge in that particular situation, but they do all, most of the things that a judge would do, but they're really there to kind of help move things along. But here's the thing. They get they get hired based on the people who are on the court. So you have the US District Court for the District of Columbia, where James Boasberg is the chief judge. James Boasberg, he is
Oh,
an
yes. Oh,
embarrassment,
yeah,
but
absolutely.
he's the chief judge, and 11 out of the 15 judges in this district were appointed by either Obama or Biden. And so it kind of starts making sense like, oh, where did this guy come from? But now, if you think about judges, they should be honest, they should be neutral, they should have self control, they should show respectfulness, clarity of reasoning, they follow the law, not their feelings. But this guy, what he talked about, he was like, the defendants who took the Capitol on January 6, 2021, basically, they were treated better than you. And he said, pardons may erase convictions, but they do not erase history. So he's there during this, I'll call it an arraignment. I don't know if technically that's correct, but he's taking shots at President Trump and how the January 6th people who were arrested then were treated. And he said, I'm sorry, whatever you have been through, I apologize for that. Now, Rich, Does that sound like somebody with judicial temperament, somebody who's neutral, somebody who's respectful, who cares about the law? Or does that sound like an activist?
Oh,
And
it's
to me,
definitely, yeah, he's
it's
an
an
act.
activist. And just for um, accuracy, there's a guy, Jake Lang, who was arrested for assaulting a police officer on January 6th. So just comparing how this would be mass murderer of the president and his cabinet was treated versus January 6th. This guy was held in detention for 4 years without a trial. Okay, I don't know. He might have been an awful person, but just the fact that this guy, this judge, is bringing up that the January 6th were treated better than you. It's just like, who are you? And it just said, like, this radicalism, Rich, is deep. It is deep inside institutions in the United States.
Yeah, it really is. The system is broken when you have people like this on the bench. It's like the way you look at judges is they're the referee. They're not supposed to have a stake in the game. They're supposed to call them like they see them. They're supposed to know the rules of the game very well, which you can equate to the Constitution, the state constitution, the laws of the district and the country, and you are calling balls and strikes, and that's what a judge is supposed to do. And our judicial system has become a very activist part of the political process, and it's really undermining our entire country, and it's very dangerous. God forbid the left had control of the Supreme Court. This is so refreshing when something's going to go to the Supreme Court. You're not cringing, waiting for uh, the judicial ruling. Are you always satisfied with the ruling? No, but that's what happens when people are calling balls and strikes. Both sides get a little bit flustered at things because when you're calling balls and strikes, you have to go by all the rules. And just because it looked like the player was safe, but he ran out of the baseline, that running out of the baseline and around the guy to slide in safe, that's a rule that has to be followed. You may not like it if your team is the one that just, scored, but the bottom line is the judge can't think of that. The judge has to look at the rule. He came in. It's the same concept. And it's being accepted, which is really disappointing overall. You know, it's like when you say Bozeman or whatever his name is, the guy that just kept going after Trump, going after everything that Trump did with the illegal immigration. He was putting rulings in, and that guy, he should absolutely be expelled from the bench. And and we need to start holding judges accountable for the behaviors of the criminals that they are allowing to get out of jail. Ken, I don't know if, but we have a state law that they're trying to pass here in the assembly in Albany that is looking at releasing criminals, no matter what they did after 15 years of good behavior, and just releasing them into the population, which includes, or it might be 15, maybe it's 20. I don't care what the number is.
Yeah.
We're looking at people like the son of Sam, the guy that murdered John Lennon, and these are people, Manson. These are people that are dangerous, and they need to be. Where is accountability? There's no more consequences for bad behavior. And meanwhile, these people are protesting when a Walgreens closes down in a district where they let criminals back out in the street, and they don't even prosecute crimes against a company stealing. So the company goes away, but the company's the bad guy.
Yeah.
It's basically they are blaming Walgreens for leaving. Meanwhile, judges let criminals back. They don't even hold them accountable. So what do you expect? That's the kind of society we're living in right now.
Well, and Rich, you bartended for a number of years going through college. This is something that I see on social media all the time. And I think there's a lot of truth to this. If a bartender overserves a customer and that customer injures himself or other people, the bartender is held accountable. And maybe some people would poo poo this idea, but why wouldn't you hold a judge accountable similar to the way you hold a bartender accountable for making a irresponsible decision?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, our Uncle Bob, who owned Reman's Tavern up in Congers, he had that happen to him. And fortunately, with all the witnesses, that the gentleman who killed somebody, he stopped in our uncle's bar. He lived right next to it. So he had one drink at Uncle Bob's. And then instead of walking home, he got in his car, he went up the street and he killed somebody.
Mhm.
But he had been out all day at all these other bars, and there was a lot of evidence of that. So, but for years, he was fighting that lawsuit, and it's the same thing. And the bartender probably shouldn't have served them. But these judges, we know they shouldn't be letting these criminals out of jail. Let's do the same thing to them
Mhm.
that they hold the private sector to.
I agree. Now, Rich, moving on to another topic is
Oh, yeah.
Marco Rubio. Did you have an opportunity to see his press conference in the White House press room yesterday?
Did, and I loved it. I love Marco. I think every time Marco speaks and does things like this, he just ups his ante for being a nominee in 2028. He's a no crap type of guy. He's like, he knows his stuff. He's very direct. Now, JD Vance is a good speaker, but JD Vance is always towing two like lines. He'll always say, well, I understand what you're saying. Marco Rubio doesn't do that, which I like. He's just like, that that premise is bad. That premise makes no sense at all. Here's what the facts are. Boom. And he goes at it. I love Marco Rubio, and he has a good sense of humor, but he is really, really deliberate in his delivery of the facts. And he is so refreshing. We didn't hear about the campaign. We didn't hear about how
Yeah.
bad Joe Biden was. We didn't hear about how great he is. We heard about the facts of what's going on. And I'll tell you, there are a number of clips that came out of that, both humorous,
Yeah.
both, very substantial, and just he's a statesman, and I love him. And the way he can like break out into speaking Spanish so quickly. One of the
Yeah.
reporters, did you see it, Ken?
Yeah.
Can I
Yeah.
ask you in Spanish? And yeah, whatever. And she ends up, and he speaks like boom. He's a very, very intelligent and refreshing speaker, and I think he's got a great shot. I think he's doing a wonderful job as Secretary of State. What are your thoughts, Ken?
I think he's doing a great job as Secretary of State. And I have to say, I was I've been probably most surprised at him because prior to him becoming Secretary of State, I would have considered Marco Rubio to be more of a rhino Republican type. But like when you compare him to JD Vance, who I love JD Vance is very articulate and he can go into a tremendous amount of detail. I think JD Vance comes off as a little bit more political than Marco Rubio. The another point I want to make, and we've talked about it here numerous times on Hands on Politics, and that is that Trump should do more of using his cabinet to go out and speak, using Marco Rubio to explain why going into Iran was important, or using Doug Burgum to talk about domestic oil drilling or whatnot. I think the reason it was done like this is maybe Caroline Levitt, maybe she's gone out on maternity. I don't know,
Yes,
but
she has.
yeah, okay. So I think that this was possibly something that the White House kind of stumbled into, and I hope they
Yeah.
learned from it because, yeah, he does a fantastic job of explaining why we're doing what we're doing. He does it with some levity. He does it with speaking Spanish. He does it when referencing, a rap song. He's very relatable to a lot of people. And so
Yes.
I think he does a fantastic job. And I just hope that Trump learns from this and has his cabinet go out there, as opposed to Trump. Like you were saying, we didn't have to listen to like the US is hot, we're hot,
Yeah.
and I've
Yep.
I've ended 8 wars, and we didn't have to
Yep.
hear any of that. But um do a good job of just recognizing Trump, but not in a real obvious way.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
He's not groveling. He's not
Yes.
groveling at all.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, yeah, he's great at explaining why we're in Iran. He's doing himself a big service for his future political ambitions. This was outstanding, Rich.
Yeah, he wasn't he spent an hour. I forget how long it was, but it was a significant amount of time taking questions, and he can take any question. There's no, you're not, you're not waiting for like the, here we go again.
Yeah,
When he answers a question, you're really interested because he's going to give you the details of what that is, unless, of course, it's classified or getting ahead of what's going on.
yeah,
But he's got such a grasp of the issues because he's in the middle of it all, and he's talking to. I loved how he called out the UN and said if the UN can't even admonish the Iran activity in shutting down international waters, what good are they? What good if they can't simply say putting mines and shooting at commercial ships should not happen? If they can't even do that, why the hell do we have them? So that is a very effective way of putting the UN on notice instead of, sometimes how Trump does it.
yeah,
He just, it was just beautiful to show their the UN's absolute inability to be relevant because they're always listening to Russia and China and all of the left wing establishments, governments of the world, and putting people like Somalia and on Muslim countries on the Human Rights Commission. It's just China on the Human Rights Commission. Give me a break.
yeah,
Um, and you know, it's he's just very refreshing, Ken. I think he's going to be the one to beat in the primary. I think.
yeah,
That's a prediction. We can come back and mark this spot.
yeah. And I agree with you, Rich. Just a few more points, not on the substance, but really on the style. He's not abrasive. He doesn't humiliate the person, but it's clear that he's like admonishing them, but in a
Yeah.
good way. The other
Yep.
thing, he doesn't come off as giving the Trump administration talking points. He is the one that the talking points are based on. I mean, like,
Yes.
he's the
Yes.
guy who's talking. Other people write the talking points from based on what he just said. So, yeah,
Absolutely.
I can't say anything more about how good he did, and it was outstanding. Um,
Absolutely.
Rich, are you ready to talk a little bit about China and what they're doing in the United States in terms of farmland and cattle, beef processing and things like that?
Yes, absolutely. And personally, I don't think the president should go to China. But that's me. I think this is where when Marco Rubio was talking about China, he's talking like nuts and bolts. When President Trump talks about China, it's always, I'm friends with Gigi. We have a great relationship. Blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. I don't like that approach. I think it's like too cozy, and I, China's an enemy. We have to deal with them because of the size of them, but they are an enemy in so many ways. They actually, I found out yesterday, Ken, they supply 90% of the drones that our law enforcement use in this country. Do you think about what Israel did with cell phones and now put that on a scale with drones, and these drones are being manufactured in China. The biggest drone company is Chinese owned. And we're about to, I guess Trump has put in a policy by 2027, those drones cannot be, they have to be bought by an American based company. So that's a good thing. But whenever I hear that China has 40% of our meat packing plant ownership, they have 350,000 acres of farmland they own in our country. I'm thinking to myself, why? Why do we allow our enemy to control food supply, to control things like drones? It's insane. And this is a testament to rhino Republicans and Democrats who have allowed this to go on. They sold our jobs out to China, our manufacturing supply lines, our healthcare supply lines, our food supply lines, our national defense supply lines. They have absolutely sold us down the river. And Trump is trying to fix it. I don't think it's as fast as it should be, but this kind of stuff absolutely drives me crazy. And when Trump's gone, if it hasn't been fixed by then, these Democrats and Republicans are going to take the donations that China buys our politicians, and it'll be the same crap going forward, and we'll be vulnerable to China, just like we've sold all this overspending. China buys our debt. They own the majority of our debt. They hold leverage over us, all because of rhino Republicans and Democrats. And it's, we'll talk about it. I don't want to transition here, but in Indiana, all the Trump endorsed candidates won in the primary. But it's because of things like this.
Yeah, from my perspective, when it comes to China, we have to realize they are the number one geopolitical threat against the United States. They are number two in population, only to India. They're number two in economic growth compared to the United States. They're right up there with the size of their military, size of their navy. And so we have to take them seriously. And so you have two things. You have domestically, where they're buying up a lot of farmland and a lot of the beef processing. So, and then you have all the things that they create or make, and then we import here. So I think there's two things that the United States needs to do. We need to evaluate anytime China wants to purchase things in the United States, we have to have an evaluation process. We can't just say, oh, well, they're giving us millions and millions of dollars, I'm going to sell it to them, because we have to be concerned about their intelligence gathering, how it's going to impact supply chains and impact the United States. So I think, number one, we have to do that. And to me, that is maybe a little bit easier than the other bigger thing that you were talking about that Donald Trump is trying to reverse. And that is, we outsourced a lot of stuff that we need. Not only we need it for pharmaceuticals, for our medical industries, but also for our military industries. And the fact that you talked about law enforcement, 90% of the drones are made there, that's a concern. We have to take action to correct that. And I think Trump is trying to take action with tariffs. Whether or not the next politician who comes in does the same thing, I don't know, but I really hope he or she does, because China was the most powerful country in the world for like 2,000 years almost. So China wants to get back to in their minds, their rightful place in history.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the one thing that we continue to excel at is that in our DNA, in the American DNA, is creation. We are creators, we are innovators. We take pride in that. And the American spirit is a lot different than other places. Like in China, as an engineer, you're told to come up with stuff. You're taking orders. This is what you're working on.
Yeah.
In America, the incentive is if I create it, I own it and will get the credit for it. Where in China, you don't have that incentive. That's why so many people from foreign countries want to stay here to develop things because those very nasty billionaires, those are that's the incentive that you have in a country like America, where we are the capital of creation. And I think that will always be our advantage unless we unless we allow these morons in this picture
Yep.
to take over. When you look at all of these protests, Ken, you just look at them and you go, yeah, I could pick them out in a lineup. Got your Muslims, you've got your women, you got people wearing masks, you got it's very sad. You got the it's just tax the billionaire. What do you expect when you tax a billionaire? What is gonna change in your life? That's the question I always ask, is like, what does that matter to you? Do you think the billionaire's money is going to do anything for you? If you're sitting on your butt collecting government programs and subsidies, you know what? You, you need to redirect your life and focus on yourself, because no matter how much we tax the billionaires, your life is not changing because it's not getting to you, because the people who tell you that they're going to help you are full of crap, and they're not going to help you. It might help them. It'll put more money in their coffer, but you need to take care of yourself. That's all I have to say on that,
Yeah.
Ken.
Well, I thought it was interesting while you're talking about the American spirit, talking about freedom and how creative people like to come to the United States because they can create here.
Yes.
And I believe that is true. That's the core of the American people is we like freedom, we like creating. If I make something, I want to keep the fruits of my labor, all
Absolutely.
that. That's the core. But when you do have the Obamas and the Bidens importing millions and millions of people from third world countries, and you stack them on top of the far left Marxists that we already have here,
Yep.
I'm not saying we're close to the point of these Marxists overrunning the freedom loving people, but we're definitely more closer to it now than we were 20 years ago.
Oh, absolutely.
And we, we talked about like Boasberg and that other magistrate judge and his insanity. We have to be careful of these lunatics. And I
Yeah.
honestly do believe they're lunatics.
Yes,
But
they are.
lunatics have taken over countries in the past.
Oh,
You know,
absolutely. Look at Iran.
Look at
Absolutely.
Iran. Exactly. You look at Iran, you look at North Korea, you look at Cuba. And so we definitely have to be concerned about it. I mean, Rich, these people, anti-American, anti-business, their slogan was no work, no school, no shopping. I mean, they hate the United States. And I'll tell you what, Rich, when I looked at the crowds, they were shockingly large. And I'm like, you people are crazy. And I just think that normal people, yes, that's going to be your instinctive responses. They're crazy. But we got to take these people seriously.
Oh,
And I don't know exactly what needs to happen, but these morons who live in the most prosperous country in the world that got to this point because of freedom, because of free markets, because of free enterprise, and they just want to kill the goose that laid the golden egg. I don't know. Somehow, Rich, we have to take them seriously without them consuming us.
yeah, no, they're absolute. They're dangerous, and I wish we had somebody out there in Congress making the national case that this is what we are up against. You just have to look at the California debate for governor and what they've done to California and what they do, like right here, tax the billionaires, abolish ICE, abolish law and order. These people are very dangerous. And I wish there was somebody in Congress that said and could make the argument that if you want communism, that's where the Democratic Party's going. So anybody in any district with a D next to their name is dangerous at the national level because that's who controls the Congress. So let's show them, let's get out and vote, and let's show them that who supports our system that allows for freedom, you to keep more of what you earn, law and order, and the American dream alive. Let's show these people who's really in charge here. I wish someone would make that on a national argument. Because God forbid. The good news is that the polls, most people look at Democrats and they think they're going in the wrong direction. So that's a good thing, but the way these congressional districts have been gerrymandered, it'll be interesting to see what happens, but they really need to make it an argument. Do you support communism? Do you think that's good for you? I don't think when people look at it, do you want to pay 80% tax to get free stuff, or do you want to create your own wealth and take care of your own life and not support all these malcontents that don't want to go to work? They just want to steal from what you have and you've created. It will be a referendum, Ken. This midterm will be a referendum on which way we're going in this country. I really believe so.
Well, and Rich, I'm going to put you on the spot here. There are Democratic politicians, not many of them, that are moderate, can be reasonable, and therefore you have some normal people, some reasonable people who are like, well, I'm going to vote for this guy because he's really moderate and he's real reasonable. What happens, Rich, when you have a moderate who goes to Washington, D.C., and the speaker or the leader of the Democrats is Hakeem Jeffries or Nancy Pelosi? Does that person have any power at all to implement any moderate policies whatsoever? Maybe you can talk a little bit about that to let reasonable Democrats know what happens when they vote for a moderate Democrat.
Yeah, all you have to do is look at every vote that takes place. Do you ever see any moderate Democrats supporting any common sense legislation that makes sense, like lowering your taxes? Like, I think the only exception to this rule, Ken, is Fetterman at the Senate level.
Yep.
He is what people think they're voting for. But at the House level, to your point, when you get elected with the D next to your name, you have put people in charge. If there's more D's than R's, you have put the most radical of the Democrats in charge. Your guy is not going to be able to moderate the argument. Mm-hmm. They are just going to be a rubber stamp vote for everything that the left extreme believes in. And so the Democrats would make the same arguments on the right, but I would argue that what is the Republican Party voting on that's so radically against the American people or the culture? Show me something that they have voted for that doesn't have your interest in mind. Things like lowering your taxes, reducing drug prices, making voting more fair, going after illegal criminals, increasing law enforcement. Those are things that are good for society. Show me where they're off track. And then when you look on the Democrat side, they're voting to abolish law enforcement. They're voting to impeach a president who is elected. That's what they're going to focus on. They want to tax the rich unfairly. They want to take wealth from you, inheritance taxes. They want those. They don't believe your wealth should pass down to your kids. They believe that that's the government's money and that is racist because more white people have wealth to hand down than minorities do. That's the radical left side of the equation. It's so out of balance right now.
Yeah.
And that's the argument you have to look at. There are no moderates, and they all campaign as moderates, except for the people in like the middle of New York, like the Mondami districts that include Manhattan, right? Everybody else tries to, run as a wolves in sheep's clothing, I should say.
Yeah. I would just say a vote for a moderate Democrat is a vote for AOC, Ilhan Omar, Hakeem Jeffries. You're giving your vote to one of these people. All right, Rich. Well, it was great talking to you. We'll wrap up the show now. And I do want to remind all of our followers that you can follow us on Facebook on Hands on Politics. If you want to go to the old Twitter, X, you go to Hands on Politics. We really want to encourage you to go to YouTube, where you can go to @Hands on Politics with Rich Ken 146. Go there and like us and follow us there. And if you also want to send us an email, if you agree with us, disagree, whatever, just send us an email at hop2025@aol.com. It's been episode number 95. Well, all right. See you next week. Take care.